Folks like me, that you're starting out from absolutely nothing and nowhere. You're just an ordinary Joe, and you're imagining having the attention of the whole world. And you know that this is a very privileged situation, but at the same time, it's based on fantasy. You're just a little old Joe, and you started out the infant, mewling and puking at his mother's arms, and now you want to imagine yourself to be a world-famous personality whose very thoughts will be seized eagerly by everyone to indicate the way we should be now, because, let's face it, humanity faces a number of problems which seem to indicate that doom could lie ahead of us round the corner. And I don't know what to say that could possibly overturn the weight of such considerable years and experience of humanity slowly learning with their new gadgets how to make the mightiest of material progress seem like an instant away, and then at the same time be wailing because they feel that something is not quite right and that not everybody's mind is going in the same direction, and that all the best thoughts in the world simply lead to confusion eventually and misunderstandings that then lead to their concomitant, which is war in whatever fearsome ways we have now devised to deal with the people we don't want on this earth, or at any rate to subjugate. And we know that through all the things we see now, there are many people in the world whose minds are based on the most base of instincts, how to enhance one's own world at the detriment of the others who are not in the scheme of your things. Is there anything further to be done? Well, always you have to be able to seize the moment and carry on, because that's what you're doing anyway. And it is hard to reach out to everybody, because you know that you have reached, on the one hand, a terribly privileged position. Here I am, Joe Public, and I don't really feel engaged with the world. It's as though I have no friends, because I know that friendship is just a momentary thing. It doesn't last forever these days, and I feel, of course, lonesome. And speaking out of that sense of sorrow makes me just feel that nobody wants to listen, not for long anyway. They want to know how I can rise from this somewhat desperate phase. On the other hand, I know that somewhere in this mess there is an advantage to me, because I'm not attached to any groupings or combines or anything that normal people seem to take for granted. Of course, the first thing is family, but many people have outgrown their families and are living independent lives, so that no longer applies in this modern, fast-moving world. The best thing that I can do in such a state is to relax, right? Because that's all that's left to me. Having anxiety won't help any of you. It's an awareness, but after that you have to look round for the solutions, which is finding the universality in yourself. Excuse me while I refresh. And I do care about everybody because you're all my validation. I can't be happy without happy people around me. How long can I dance for myself? So I want to achieve that universality so that wherever I go, I feel that people around are going to be immediately able to respond to my presence by acting as the welcoming units of existence, instead of always seeming as though I have to overcome the resistance in each person to surrendering to what's around them, and to find a way that we become like children again, playing with one another because you're the people around us. Or I've seen the young people today actually using their computers to make up characters and play with those. Well, that's only a game. You still have to turn back to reality and carry on with the people around you. It's not impeding one another that becomes the means of getting some kind of readjustment and realignment of our understanding of what we can do when faced with the immensity of global existence. Most people are not living a global existence, however much they may be able to teleconference these days and send in communications to an employer from vast distances and make the whole space around the world seem interconnected and even intergalactic. But nowhere have the real bonds that would make us act as one become apparent. If we look at the United Nations, in many ways it's a hollow joke as expressing the combined unity of the world in presenting such an organization as a real advance in human civilization. Too often, when it interferes in countries, it actually promotes vice, civil disturbance, and leaves somewhat humiliatingly without the problems that they originally addressed having been overchanged. Yes, there are places in Africa where United Nations intervention seems momentarily to have led to the country getting another chance to look at itself and try to work together. And yet everybody fears that even there barbarity will break out soon enough, as soon as some unfavorable conditions like droughts or so on, or natural catastrophes, turn people's minds to looking after their own interests again, to the exclusion of the common good. And nowadays, I'm involved with people on the internet who all sound like angels, as though all their ideas are so beautiful that with so many people around, surely we're starting to build this better world that we've kept looking for ever since I became a hippie back in the 60s and felt that it was really the only game in town to work for a better world. And sure, I don't quite see it happening, excuse me, but at the same time, I do see that the seeds have definitely been planted. The children of my friends and peers, they definitely are more advanced in knowing that this higher purpose is there for all of us to embrace, even though we go in tangents as to how we are achieving this common objective, still you feel that if we can simply ignore the distractions that the unreorganized elements of humanity have not yet grasped, that we can somehow stay focused and be of aid and assistance to this great task. Still, I am a Jew, and as a Jew, I can look at the Palestinians and say, look, you have to acknowledge my existence. You have to accept that we are here in this area. And until you let us know that you have done that, and that we are going to find a way out of this problem, then there is nowhere to start. And all the people who you found as your friends are not going to help you solve the immediate and facing situation. Yes, we are here and you are there. And it makes us seem like bullies that we are, through our technical expertise and our educational faculties, we are making your own ways of resisting our expressions of our existence. You are making us constantly nervous and unprepared to listen. Don't you see what you are doing? You have to acknowledge me, for example, just as one example of my tribe. I'm around, and that area around Jerusalem is obviously going to be of vital importance to us internally. And if you don't recognize that, what's the good of pretending that we can solve this problem? And so, if you are saying, yes, we intend to achieve our aims, because you know that we're not just talking about a small Palestinian state. Like all the Arabs, in the end, you want a great empire to vaunt your superior knowledge of morality and daily living that you feel over us Jews. It's a similar feeling. It's not that one side is better than the other. Each is locked in a stupid, childish way of reacting to one another. Of course, I know, because I know of such possibilities, I know that inside Jerusalem, it is actually possible for Jews and Arabs to live together. And most of the time they do. Away from the hurly-burly, they've been managing to carry on through a sort of commercial, holding back one's inner feelings kind of world where civility and recognizing the prevailing authority is the best way to show the daily existence can be relatively peaceful. So you've achieved that in very small pockets that people don't really know about, because the ones who express themselves in violent language and with hatred in their heart are the ones that capture the attention of the media, and therefore the people who read what they have to say. How many people are expecting miracles from this vote at the United Nations? Even among the Palestinians, do you believe that being assigned statehood will be anything more than a perk for certain of your NGOs and other organizations to start collecting money from the United Nations coffers instead of having to ask for your sugar daddies, maybe the Saudis or Qataris or whoever, or the Iranians, to supply you with funds. Really, it's not going to make that much difference either way, is it? Until really this change takes place in people and you start finding a way to get closer with one another, because which Israelis is going to let people in whom they don't know that they're not harboring ill intent if your weapons of warfare include attacking civilian targets? And similarly with the Israelis, in their state of, which everybody is acknowledging is awful superiority complex, if they cannot find ways to respect the people, native indigenous peoples, then there can be no final answer to whether they deserve to live in this area or not. And it may be that the whole question will be disposed of by another cataclysm, which will then lead to a further dispersal, what they call the diaspora, is it? I don't know where I fit in, little old Joe, in all these big complexities. Where can I find the answer in my own behavior? I see the problem over and over. Be absolutely detached from previous prejudices and misconceptions that you've allowed yourself to be inundated with and make you unable to just move into the world with the assurance and gaiety that would enable you to be just accepted as a delightful being. You can't be sure that in the future you're going to have any companions, Joe, but you can assure yourself that you stay in the moment intensely enough to feel the challenge of being always reaching for a better and better capability in yourself. That's the only path I can take. It is to reassure myself, because I allowed myself to be weighed down by the seeming impossibility of people around me and myself participating in this jubilation. I didn't believe it was going to be possible in this lifetime. That is why I'd become a liability. With all my so-called wisdom of being the against it. Bring you back to that Groucho Marx joke. If you've got any ideas, I'm against it. Yes, I've known that side of myself, but I was always looking for the reassurance that the absolute brings to me. Because yes, I feel I have experienced absolute bliss, and I know of the possibility of living a life that I would call enlightened. I have to sound arrogant, but it is, in the end, it's a very simple feeling of just being light-hearted. That leads to a lighter step, and that leads to everything becoming enhanced. That's what I achieved for a brief period, and that's what I know humanity has to achieve if it is going to get rid of the darker side, which has been put there by the divine too, because we are not only living in light, we live in darkness as well. But we can harmonize the two different sides of the whole by living with both of them harmoniously. And so our sleep becomes relieved of pressure, and our awakening moments become filled with the excitement of ever newly rising periods of heightened emotions, followed no doubt by a certain lowering of the heat, but in the main proving to be the delightful, beautiful world that is around us as well as all the other problems. I'm going to imagine that we have gotten over the preliminaries here, and that we have all assembled to just be sitting in one place, being receptive to the total world around us and listening quietly to our own selves speaking to the rest of the assembled congregation in telepathic fashion, so that you not only had the ability, though, to speak to the others, but also feel their input, collective input, at the same moment, all speaking to ourselves and yet one another. I've become a creature of questions and definitely not yet answers. And because of that, I say, this is what ordinary Joes do. They find the common humanity in themselves, and then that expresses itself as the desire to be of help to another person, because that person is just you in another space. You, because the collective you at this moment is bent on the same goal. We know in our hearts what goal we want to achieve. And it is not for me to say what your goal is, but there is the feeling that if we can achieve oneness in hearts, then all problems will just melt and disappear, and we will find the way to be at ease with one another, and then the societies around us will become healthier and healthier, because this is where the diseases and the problems have multiplied. It starts from yourself, and then you see all around you the world reflecting your own unease. So that's all I can promise out of this colloquy that I have set up here, that I can achieve. I'm going to try to be more and more at ease. Nothing was going to make me feel at variance with that goal. And I'm doing it now, because on the one hand, my thoughts have slowed down. I don't know what the next moment will hold, but I only know that I'm holding my heart at abeyance. This is a kind of a prayer, because I don't know the form of words at this moment to make the prayer, but I know that I'm going towards it, and it will become lighter and lighter, and I will become easier and easier in my own mind and know what to say and do next, because I've shown in the last 24 hours that I'm a bit of a mess, and that my thoughts scatter in all different places, and I can't find the central directory to make me speak in one subject coherently without veering off at a tangent or becoming bound by the knot of words. But this is you too, even though each of you may be a professional broadcaster, a respected member of the community who is listened to with the proper respect due you, or even the village fool who's always being laughed at and derided, but still provides somewhat a relief to the heaviness that other people who are wiser may be feeling. And this is a striving for universality. That's identifying oneself with everyone, and at the same time pronouncing one's individuality and being happy with that too. Because otherwise, where would the joy of existence lie if it was all just ant-like, all moving to the same rhythm without anyone having any feeling of wonder at one's own individuality? I can only say, hello world, I'm reaching out. You can all do the same thing, and we can all find ourselves in this jubilation. If you get what I mean, you'll start doing the same thing. And there will be more and more ordinary Joes coming forward to parade their stupidity, and through that, the feeling that that too will come away and become an acceptance of all around, and particularly oneself. So, coming back to this vote, how about we forget about the vote for the moment, and we see in our own minds the beginning of a path towards thinking about peaceful solutions, starting to initiate moves that will enable you to meet with your former enemies in at least peaceful beginning, and see each time that that is questioned, that you go back to the original feeling and regain the pathway, the impetus towards finding out the answer to our suspicion and mutual hatred. So this is in my own heart. Everything that I see in another person as being dark is in my own heart too. If you cannot see the oneness, you will never see a way out except through war. And I know that I don't want a war with anyone. I know that I'm looking for the answer all the time. What's wrong with me? I don't immediately think I am right in every situation. But at the same time, righteousness, again, is the better path. Even though I have seen the darker side, I am in the end convinced that the righteousness is a thrilling bell that awakens one to any deviation from it, and that whatever mistakes one has made, you will see that mistake more clearly when someone around you is again trying to find the answer to the happiness that can combine two people in harmonious existence, what we call a marriage. And that kind of thing is what will help us. So, amen. I'm giving up for the moment because I've reached 30 minutes. And this is a help. This is not the answer, but this is a help. Goodbye, everyone. and speak to you again soon, hopefully, or maybe a long time if I think that this is more important than immediate gratification of having the technology to do this. Imagine, folks like me, that you're starting out from absolute